If you listen real close and you pay attention, you can find the idea of being resilient everywhere in our modern culture. You'll hear it in interviews with elite athletes, or you'll hear it used by powerful CEOs in their motivational speeches. Polished politicians and influential writers, well, they use it constantly. Why? Why does it seem like everyone's chasing this virtue of resilient? I believe it's because people realize deep down that being resilient is the key to living a satisfying and successful and a better life. But what exactly does it take to be resilient? What actions can you do to be a resilient person or a resilient family? Heck, what does it mean exactly? The truth is, it can mean different things to different people. But I'm sure you'll agree that being resilient usually means being both mentally and physically tough and having the ability to endure hardships. It's basically having enough mental, physical, and emotional resolve to overcome challenges in your life. And while this covers the idea of resilience fairly well, I think Eric Greeton does a superb job of defining resilience in his book by the same name. Quote, "Resilience is the virtue that enables people to move through hardships to become better. Because no one escapes pain, fear, and suffering. Yet from pain can come wisdom, and from fear can come courage, and from suffering can come strength, if we have the virtue of resilience." End quote. Yes, I think he nails it. That's exactly what resiliency is. But even after we grasp resilience at this broader level, I think it's still a bit too vague to help. Sure, you get the gist, but how can you apply this virtue to your everyday life? How can you become a more resilient person? I mean, you can't just stop by the store on your way home and pick up a 5-pound sack of resiliency, right? That's why I think you need a roadmap. You need some kind of checklist, action plan to determine how resilient you are or how fragile you are to the uncertain future. And you need the exact steps you need to take meaningful action. Because like with any goal in life, if you don't have an action plan and you don't have any goals, you're never going to improve. And you also need a way to track your progress, to actually see the improvement on paper. So today, I'm going to give you a specific framework to become more resilient. The first thing I want to do is break down this idea of resiliency into 4 categories. 1, strategic backups. 2, physical resilient. 3, mental resilient. And 4, emotional resilient. Okay, let me start by asking you a question. Which is better, redundancy or efficiency? This is important because we can't have both. You can either have more redundant systems or efficient systems because they're polar opposites, like oil and water. They don't mix. You can either become more efficient or more redundant, but as you gain one, you reduce the other. Here's a short example of this. About a decade ago, I was a maintenance manager at a large food manufacturing plant. And one key tool to reduce factory downtime was to install redundant systems. I'm talking about backup water pumps and backup tanks and backup dryers and things like that. And these backups, they helped ensure that if one of the main production lines broke down, the entire factory wouldn't shut down with it. And that strategy is what redundancy can do for you. It's a strategic backup for your critical systems. So let's say if a critical liquid pump broke down during production, well, we could just switch to the redundant system and we could keep things running. But these strategic backups are not free. The extra pumps cost money to install and they take labor to maintain them. And we had to store more parts in the stockroom because of it. I knew the reality of these costs very well as the maintenance manager. You see, I wanted lots of redundancy everywhere I could get it. I mean, that's what maintenance is all about, is keeping the factory running and preventing downtime. But the accountants, well, they look at the bottom line and they didn't want to give me any extra money unless I could justify it, which makes sense. But that's where you see redundancy versus efficiency. You see it in the financial statements. That's where the battle happens. For example, in your own life, an emergency cash fund is a highly liquid strategic backup. But cash is one of the least efficient ways to store your money. Inflation nowadays, it's costing us daily in purchasing power to keep a large emergency fund. So an emergency fund is redundant, but it's not efficient. Or how about critical medical supplies such as masks and prescription drugs? Sure, way more efficient and profitable to get these supplies from a foreign source due to the cheap labor. And it's also more efficient to keep inventories low because big inventories, they just eat up working capital. And that's the money businesses use for things like spending on advertising or paying their payroll. And they need that money to operate efficiently. But by choosing efficiency, sure, it looks great when the world's running smooth. But when bad things happen, efficiency will bite you in the ass. That's why anything we deem a critical supply in this country should have a minimum level of redundancy in place before we ever consider efficiencies. And in your own life, what could be more critical than water, heat, food, and medical supplies? Those are the critical items we all need to survive, right? Without these, our bodies will break down through dehydration, hypothermia, starvation, and disease. But due to our modern society's massive infrastructure and delivery systems, we've all become complacent to these realities. America and other first world countries, we've all chosen efficiency over redundancy. We've put profit and greed ahead of robustness. How do I know this? Well, a few years ago, I stumbled across a poll of Americans and their food and water backup supplies. And I found that 53% did not have 3 days of non-perishable food or water in their homes. 53%. What I call the fragile masses. So the first step to becoming more resilient is to acquire some strategic backup supplies. Now, I'm not talking about doomsday prepping here. I'm talking about why strategic backups that every family should have. Again, 53% of Americans didn't have 3 days of life-supporting critical supplies. That's more than just irresponsible. That's gross negligence. That's completely fragile. So how much strategic backup should you have? Well, that's a hard question to answer, and I don't have time to go into detail today. But if you want to know more, you should subscribe to this YouTube channel because I'll be covering that topic someday soon. I'll just say this today. Deciding how much is a very personal choice. Some folks are comfortable with a week, and that's fine for most likely emergencies. Other folks prefer a month. Still, others go for multiple months or even a year. Again, you get to choose how much is right for you and your family, but less than a week, I just don't think that's acceptable. I think the minimum for most people should be at least a month. That's just me though. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about physical resiliency. First up, your body is not a machine. Sure, there are a few similarities. Yeah, you have parts and you have organs that work together, kind of like a machine, and you give your body a constant source of energy, like a machine. But there's one massive difference between bodies and machines. Your body will get stronger with frequent micro stressors, while machines, they'll break down. This is how humans build muscle. This is how you get stronger and how you avoid atrophy. So to be physically resilient, you need regular amounts of stress through exercise. You want proof? Just look at the difference between a bedridden couch potato and a marathon runner. Which body is more physically resilient? Obviously, the runners. Of course, you can overstress your body and cause injury or even death. For example, the stress of falling from a 30-foot building to a concrete parking lot is way too much stress to overcome, right? Or if you try to run a marathon and you don't do any training beforehand, you're a high injury risk, right? But if you instead, little by little, day by day, you micro-stress your body, it will respond. And over time, you will become a more robust and a more resilient organism. So a big part of living a resilient life is to keep your body healthy. Again, what this looks like is different for everyone, and I'm not a health expert or a doctor. But this also isn't rocket science. You either use it or you lose it. Okay, let's move on. Mental resiliency. Mental resiliency is all about becoming mentally tough. And it all comes down to you telling your body who's in charge. Doing hard, uncomfortable things and overcoming obstacles regularly, even if your mind and your body is screaming, no, don't stop. An example of such mental resiliency is taking a cold shower or a cold plunge. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Will your brain scream, no, don't do it? Yeah, without a doubt, especially if it's your first time, but I promise it won't kill you. And there's immense value in understanding that. You see, what you think your body can handle and what it can actually handle is miles apart. In the past, I've come across a couple of studies that I've looked into, and it had like marathon runners who at the end of a really long race, they asked them how much they had left in the tank, right? What was left in their bodies. And they were all just wiped out. But if you look at their physical bodies scientifically, they had lots left, right? They weren't about to expire and die on the spot. They're mentally, they were exhausted. They had nothing left. They thought, man, I'm cramping, the body just can't continue. But they weren't really near the ultimate limitation of death or anything like that. So it just goes to show that a lot of the limits we put on ourselves physically is due to mental. We put mental limits. It's our limiting beliefs as opposed to our physical limitations. So most of the time, it's not our bodies that hold us back, but it's our limiting beliefs. So to become more physically resilient, you have to push past comfortable. And to do that is 100% mental. So if you perform simple, safe mental resiliency challenges, you'll also make yourself more resilient, but here's the key. You also make yourself more grateful. For example, by taking a cold shower, you'll start noticing and enjoying your hot showers more in the future. You'll stop taking them for granted because doing mental resiliency challenges like this helps create contrast in your life. We've all heard that saying that the sweet wouldn't be nearly as sweet or as enjoyable without the sour, right? Because contrasts, they create experiences in our life. And the more we can find joy in the small things, you see, I believe constant comfort and constant luxury are modern day diseases. They create mental weakness over time, just like lying around weakens your muscles. Always taking the mentally easy path weakens your resolve, softens your soul. And all our modern technological wonders, they've made our society mentally squishy. Sorry, but it's true. Our ancestors, they were much tougher mentally than we are today. And that's why you need to focus on becoming more mentally tough if you want to be resilient. You need to actively swim against the lazy current. You need to do uncomfortable things such as take cold showers, hike in the rain, sleep on the floor, skip a few meals, and unplug from screens. Occasional challenges such as these will make you mentally tough and more grateful for your modern day comforts. And being grateful is one of the best ways to be both mentally and emotionally resilient, which is the next category on our list. You see, humans, we're not entirely rational. Sure, we understand what being rational means, but as humans, we also have irrational emotions. We have feelings, we have needs, we have wants that all control us. We have desires. Now, emotions are not all bad. They're kind of what makes us humans, right? Without feelings, we'd just be organic robots. Emotions allow us to experience joy and contentment and love and companionship and gratitude. But with the good comes the pain, such as loss and rejection and envy and hate and loneliness. So to become emotionally resilient, you want to decrease the frequency and severity of the destructive emotions and increase the positive ones, right? Now again, I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist. I'm an engineer. And some folks have more going on than just regular human emotions. Some folks have legit chemical imbalances and past traumas to deal with and should seek professional help. I also believe that most people can benefit from a change in their perspective. And I think the three most important values of being emotionally resilient are 1, relentless courage, 2, immense patience, and 3, overwhelming gratitude. Again, I don't have time to deep dive into each of these virtues today. So again, subscribe if you want to hear about these in more detail in the future. If you can shift more on focusing to these more positive emotional states, you'll automatically become more emotionally resilient. Or, for example, it's impossible to feel overwhelming gratitude and anger at the same time. It can't be done. But it's important that your gratitude must be real. You can't fake it. Sure, you could pretend you're being grateful, but you'll still harbor resentment in your heart. Instead, if you can foster true, authentic gratitude, then there's no space for negative emotions to take root. So if you can keep your heart filled with gratitude, you'll push out the hate and the envy and the anger. And immense patience is also an essential trait for emotional well-being. I love the lyrics from the song I'm in a Hurry by the band Alabama. Here's a quote from it. I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rush and rush until life's no fun. All I really got to do is live and die, but I'm in a hurry and don't know why. Why the hell are we in a constant state of frenzy? We rush to work and then we rush home. We rush to the concert and then we leave early to beat the traffic. We rush to the airport because we waited to the last minute and then we get upset at the security line because it's doing too good of a job. We knowingly procrastinate and then we rush around like maniacs to meet our deadlines. What are we all chasing? Why are we all rushing through this moment right now? What, to get to a future moment that doesn't even really exist? A future moment we think will be better than the present one? Only to discover that when we arrive at that better future, we're already concentrating on the next better future? It's insane. Instead, if you learn to be more patient with others, and more importantly, with yourself, you'll enjoy life more and appreciate others more. Chronic impatience is a breeding ground for negative emotions. It's a fertilizer for emotional weeds to grow. Finally, I think we can all admit we could all use a bit more courage, right? I believe courage is the key to discovering true happiness and freedom. Why? Because being courageous means accepting rejection. You see, we all feel judged by others. That's why we care what we wear and what we drive, and we care about which people we hang out with. These are all ways we virtue signal. It's one of the main ways we avoid rejection. If we fit in, we feel like we have worth. We all fear rejection, right? It's a built-in human fear. It's part of the reason why we rush around. We want to prove to others and ourselves that we're worthy. So to stop living a life to appease others, you must work on being more courageous. Stop being fearful of what others think of you. To put yourself out there, to share your work and your talents with the world. Not because you fear what others think, because you like it. You enjoy it regardless of what others think. Without such courage in your life, you'll slowly build up regrets. And that's one of the saddest things to witness is when somebody looks back on their life and is filled with overwhelming regret. So to combat regret, you must be courageous. So if you focus on those 4 aspects of resiliency, you'll go from being part of the fragile masses to living a more fulfilling, happier, resilient life. And as you can tell, living a resilient life is the key to reducing anxiety and creating a more satisfying, joyful, and happy life. You can gain lasting peace of mind with strategic backups. And you can foster feelings of confidence and satisfaction with a strong, healthy body. You can strengthen your mental toughness by overcoming challenges and obstacles. And you can become more courageous and become more patient and be more grateful. Now, if all these traits, they sound like something that you'd be interested in improving, then you should check out a membership called the Resilient Life. This is a program that I developed and I put together from the ground up based in these traits. This program provides regular challenges straight to your email inbox. It's got mental resiliency challenges and physical resiliency challenges. It also has something called success badges that you try to accomplish different goals for your strategic backups. That way you have some supplies, you have some food, some water, some medical supplies. And as you meet those goals, you'll gain something called a readiness score point. And that's the tracking system. That's how you see how you personally become more resilient over time as your readiness score goes up and up and up. And the Resilient Life, it's a community of like-minded folks as well, right? So if you have any questions or you need some help or you want some motivation or you want to provide inspiration for someone else because maybe you know something that they don't, well, this is all part of the community. We share, we talk, and we pat each other on the back online when we have successes. So after watching this entire video, I think you're a perfect person to join this community of people and to start putting resiliency as one of your number one virtues so that you can see the success and the satisfaction and the happiness in your life that this kind of focus can bring. So until next time, prepare, adapt, and overcome.